There are nights when the word help simply won't come out. You've hit a wall at work, one you can't seem to get past, but telling your boss feels impossible. You come home, and you don't want to worry your family, so you smile and say, "Yeah, it was a long day," and leave it at that. You lie down, but your mind keeps spinning, round and round, long after the lights go out. Do you know that feeling? If I ask someone, I'll just be a burden. I have to figure this out myself. I don't want anyone to think I'm weak. Those thoughts layer on top of each other, and before you know it, you've been carrying something heavy, completely alone, for a very long time. If that sounds familiar, I'm glad you found your way to this video today. What I'd like to talk about is the act of asking for help, not as a sign of weakness, but as something that takes a quiet, deep kind of courage. And I'd like to explore through a gentle story passed down from the Buddha himself, why reaching out to another person matters, not just for you, but for them too. There was once a monk who walked for days through a forest, carrying a wound he wouldn't show anyone, until his leg gave out beneath him on a muddy path. A stranger found him there, and stayed through the night, and only then did the monk understand. By refusing help, he had also refused to give it. When you speak your struggle aloud to another person, you give them something precious, the chance to matter, the chance to be human alongside you. This story comes from roughly 2,500 years ago. In a corner of ancient India, there was a young man who had no steady work, had grown distant from his family, and moved through his days almost entirely alone. Reaching out to others, even just striking up a conversation, let alone asking for something, felt frightening in a way he couldn't quite explain. So he didn't. One day he set out on a journey, not because he was searching for anything in particular. He simply couldn't stay still anymore. He walked, and by the time the light began to fade, he found himself far from anywhere familiar. Rain began to fall. With nowhere to go and no shelter in sight, he ducked into a small roadside hut on the edge of town. Someone was already inside, a man with a calm, unhurried face, sitting quietly in the corner. A traveling monk, perhaps. The young man hesitated. Will I be in the way? Is it even all right to speak to him? But the rain was growing heavier, and so in a small and uncertain voice, he said, "Would it be all right if I stayed here for a while?" The man looked up slowly and smiled. "Of course," he said. "Please come in." They talked through the night, and gradually, almost without realizing it, the young man began to share things he had never been able to say to anyone. His work, his family, the weight of all that solitude. The man across from him simply listened. No judgment, no hurry. He was just there. When morning came and they prepared to part ways, the young man asked, "Who are you?" The man answered gently, "Just a traveler." But later, the young man would come to learn the truth, that the person he had spoken to that rainy night was the Buddha himself. He is said to have told others afterward, "If I hadn't found the courage to speak up that night, I might have spent the rest of my life walking with that weight, and never once setting it down." Of everything in this story, the moment that stays with me most is a simple one. The young man opening his mouth and saying those words, "Would it be all right if I stayed here for a while?" Up until that point, he had been silent. He was caught between wanting to speak and being afraid of being a burden, afraid of being turned away. That fear had kept the words from coming, but he let them come anyway. And that small act changed everything. There's a teaching in Buddhism called dependent origination, the idea that all things arise in relationship to one another. Nothing exists in isolation. We come alive through connection. That is what this teaching tells us. When the young man spoke, the Buddha's presence in that hut found its meaning. When the Buddha listened with such quiet warmth, the young man found the courage to speak. Remove either one and that encounter never happens. Which means that asking for help is never a one-way exchange. It doesn't just ease the burden of the person asking, it gives the other person something too. The quiet joy of being needed, of being trusted, of mattering to someone. That too is part of what it means to be connected. The Buddha is also said to have offered these words: "To carry your suffering in silence is to close the door of your heart. When the door is shut, no light can enter. No fresh air comes through." Asking for help is the act of opening that door, just a crack, not wide open, just a little. "That's enough," he said. "I understand the feeling of not wanting to seem weak." But in the Buddha's eyes, the person who could ask for help was not weak at all. They were someone who had found a rare and quiet kind of courage. The door stayed open after that day. Other people began to arrive at the hut, not because the young man had changed, but because he had finally let someone see him as he was. And in being seen, he became real to them in a way that silence never could have allowed. So how might we bring this into the everyday moments of our own lives? Think about work for a moment. Have you ever sat frozen in front of a task for hours, unable to bring yourself to say, "I'm not sure how to do this. They'll think I should already know. I don't want to add to anyone's workload." That hesitation quietly drains you and often slows things down far more than a simple question ever would. But here's what's worth remembering. The person you're afraid of burdening usually doesn't see it that way. More often than not, being asked for help makes someone feel trusted, needed. It can open a door between two people that might have stayed closed forever. Just like that young man's small, uncertain voice on a rainy night. The same is true in our personal relationships. If I tell them what I'm really going through, they might find it too heavy. So we keep smiling. We only show the put-together version of ourselves. But genuine closeness, the kind that lasts, tends to need a moment of vulnerability. When both people show only their polished surfaces, the conversation never gets below a certain depth. You end up talking in armor. And then one day you say, "I've actually been struggling a bit lately." And something shifts. The room gets warmer. That's happened to most of us at least once. For those of you raising children, when you want to teach a child that it's okay to ask for help, the most powerful thing you can do is let them see you doing it. "I'm a little worn out today. Could you give me a hand?" That one sentence tells your child something that no lecture ever could. That asking for help isn't shameful. It's human. And for those who find it harder and harder as the years go on to accept help from others, that desire not to be a burden is a beautiful impulse. It really is. But sometimes without meaning to, it keeps the people who care about you at a distance. It quietly takes from them the chance to be there for you. Your willingness to say, "I need a little help." Before we close today, just one thing. The words "I need help" are not words of weakness. They are words that say, "I trust you." They are words that say, "I want to be close to you." When someone hears those words and feels truly needed, it gives their life a quiet sense of meaning. Asking for help doesn't only lighten your own load, it can light a small, steady flame in someone else's heart as well. If you're carrying something right now, something that feels too heavy to say out loud, please, if you can, open the door just a little. It doesn't have to be the right words. You don't need to explain it perfectly. "I've just been having a hard time lately." That's enough. That's more than enough. The young man stood in the doorway of that hut on a rainy night, voice trembling, and said, "Would it be all right if I stayed here for a while?" That one sentence changed the course of his life. I believe your small, quiet "I need help" can do the same, drawing you and someone else closer together in a way you might not yet be able to imagine. Thank you so much for being here with me today. The monk who opened that door asked no questions that night, only offered tea and a place by the fire. Years later, the young man became a teacher himself, and the first thing he taught others was how to recognize when someone is standing in a doorway, trembling, waiting to be welcomed. This is how compassion moves through the world, not in grand gestures, but in the simple willingness to let someone in.